Hi everyone, and welcome to De Montfort University and our fantastic opportunity for the next hour talking about women's football and women in football. So I'd like the panel to start now introducing themselves, but firstly I'm Fiona, I'm Head of Sport at De Montfort University and I'm the host for the next hour. So we'll first go to Holly and Libby.
Hi Fiona, thank you so much for having us today. I'm Holly Morgan, I'm club captain for Leicester City Women's Football Club and I've been playing for Leicester since the age of 11.
I'm Libby Smith and I'm also a footballer at Leicester City Football Club. I've been playing here since I was 7 years old in the youth setup.
Thank you both, and now we go to Remi.
Hi guys, I'm Remi Allen. I also play for Leicester City Women. I joined this year, but I originally started my career at Leicester because I'm a Leicester girl. So I've come back home.
Fantastic. Welcome all three of you. Now we go to Annie. Who's just loading, so bear with us. That's technology for us. No, so we'll try Annie one more time. No luck with Annie there. So what we'll do, we'll go to Georgie.
Hi everyone, I am Georgie van Dijk and I'm men's first team coach at De Montfort University. I'm also men's under 21s head coach at Kidderminster Harriers and academy coach at Birmingham City Football Club.
Fantastic, a very large portfolio there, Georgie. And last but no means least, we'll go to Hannah.
Hi everybody, pleasure to join you guys today. My name is Hannah Curwen and I am the former chairwoman of De Montfort Women's Football Club and still an avid football supporter to this day.
Thank you, Hannah. Whilst we wait for Annie to come and join us, we'll get cracking with some information about all of you guys. So what I'd like, in the order that you've come on screen, to talk us through your journey into football.
Right, so my journey into football, I would say, started as a kid. I just wanted to copy what my brother did. So I was playing in the garden with my brother and my dad, following him around his training sessions, etc. I then started to play in school. I was the only girl, so I kind of had to only play with the boys. There wasn't enough girls who were playing football to be able to play in a girls' football team. And from then on, I started to play for Leicester City, but it was the development team. So at that time, you had the RTC and you also had a development centre. So I started in the development centre and then I made it into the RTC for the under-12s. And since the under-12s, I've been playing for Leicester up until this point. So I guess to answer the question, I kind of got into it just because of, not really because of my brother, but we've always been quite a sporty family. So whatever he did, I kind of wanted to do. So we're quite competitive. So in the garden, I would just be following him around, trying to win the ball off him and just kind of play football at whatever opportunity I could. So I guess for me, it started with my family and then I progressively got involved in teams and then found my way to Leicester.
So for me, it's kind of similar upbringing with like male influences in my house. I've got two older brothers, so I was kind of similar in the garden, wanting to kick around with them, following whatever they do. I started off playing at my local club with some lads when I was about 4 or 5 years old, as I could kick really. And then from there, I got spotted from Leicester Academy, and I was there from the age of 7 up to the age of 15, so I was there for 9 seasons. And then I moved away from home at 16 to play for Chelsea under 23s as a different sort of experience. And I played there for 2 seasons. And then after that, I came back to Leicester to be a full-time footballer, which I've been back here now for just over 2 seasons.
I guess for me, it started very, very young. I'm a family of 4 girls, so there was no lads in my environment. But my dad and his best friend started a boys' football team. Predominantly it was boys, and then he realised all of a sudden I could play, probably about the age of 6. So I joined the football team, loved playing with the lads, got to the age obviously where you have to transition to go, you can't play with them anymore. Was absolutely devastated, was adamant I didn't want to play with girls. I thought girls were rubbish, which is bad now. And I actually joined Leicester, so I was playing for both lads on a Saturday, girls on Sunday, or vice versa. Obviously then got to a point where you can't play for lads anymore. So I was playing for Leicester. I got picked up by England at the age of 13. So I was at the under 15s from the age of 13. So I had my career with that. I was fortunate I went and studied at Loughborough College in the Player Development Centre with England, which was amazing. It was basically full-time football at the age of 16. And then I had a career. I went from Leicester, I went to Leeds, because at that time Leicester were in a lower league and Leeds were in the Premier League as it was then. And then I moved on to the Super League, where I played for Lincoln. I then went on to Birmingham, had a great few seasons at Birmingham, Champions League football, etc. Then went to Reading, and then took the step last season to come home basically to Leicester and help and be a part of trying to get us promoted back into the Super League, well, for the first time.
Thanks, Remi. And we've now got Annie back. So Annie, if you can introduce yourself and then just briefly talk us through your football journey.
Yeah, so I'm Annie. I'm currently a PhD student at De Montfort University. I'm also playing for the women's football team at De Montfort, and I've used to play for Leicester. I'm now playing at Eaton. And my story basically, just used to play with sort of brother and stuff. My dad when I was really little. Was quite lucky actually. There was a girls team that had just been set up locally, so I went to play for them, and then went to play for Leicester Ladies, which is rivals to Leicester Women, when I was sort of 13, I think. Then when I was 16, went straight over to the women's team. Was with them up until last season, and then moved across to Long Eaton. But I'm still coaching at Leicester Women, so that's sort of my journey.
Fab, thank you. And then Georgie.
So my journey was slightly different. I started playing when I was quite young, but I actually got into coaching boys when I was 13. So I had quite a quick transition from playing into coaching, and it took off from that point. I started coaching Sunday League, under 5s. I went through with that same team of boys up until under 17s. But throughout that period, I was with academy players in academy settings, community settings, school settings, higher education. And now I'm doing a bit of everything. I'm doing academy football. I'm doing higher education football. I'm doing everything basically. But I now get to coach 7 days a week. So living the dream.
Thank you, Georgie. And finally, Hannah.
Yeah, so my football journey is quite similar to the rest of the guys. I grew up in a household that loved football, predominantly my dad. Big shout out to Port Vale, huge club, I know. And then I started training age 7 because my older sister joined a local girls team. And obviously, if your older sibling does something, you have to do it because that's just the rules. And then got really into it and continued to play in the local area and then throughout university. And I still now, at my old age, drag myself around the football field on a Sunday and play grassroots football. So it's been a long journey, but I'm still enjoying it.
Fantastic. Thank you all. As you can see, we've got some similarities and some differences with regards to how everyone's got into football. But fantastic to hear that everyone is still avidly involved and just as passionate as day one from when you got involved. I was wondering, with regards to, you've all spoken about different experiences. Have you experienced any barriers in those journeys? And so I was wondering if anybody wants to pick that up to begin with regards to barriers into your journey of football. We'll go to Georgie. Do you want to start us off?
Absolutely. Yeah, as you can probably imagine, many barriers. But I think because I started coaching at such a young age, I was quite unaware of the fact that I was the only girl coaching these young boys. And I obviously stood out. But again, I didn't really realise that I stood out because it was the norm for me. Because I've always been coaching boys and now I coach men. It's so normal. But then sometimes I step back and go, oh, it's not that normal, because people say a lot of stuff and question me maybe, but definitely lots of barriers. But I don't really see them as barriers. It's just one thing I've just got to get over it, and it's not a big thing. I try not to make it into a big thing because I feel like it makes it a lot harder. So for me, I just take it in my stride. I mean, there's going to be things along the way that will be challenging. But I mean, I've got this far. So I get to when I was 13. I'm now 26. So if I can get this far, I'm sure I can make it even further in the men's game.
Thanks, Georgie. Hannah, you gave a little bit of a nod when we spoke about barriers. Is there anything that resonates with yourself?
As Georgie was saying, I mean, I think most women footballers have faced a barrier, unfortunately, at some point. I know I have, but I know one thing that I used to really relish in is when you could overcome it, you know, whether it's down the park and lads are like, you're going to play, and then you take the ball around them and score and you think, oh, well, that was just made my day. Or, you know, there's more serious barriers. I know one experience I had that always really annoyed me and still does to this day was within school. You know, we talk about you get to that age where you're told you can't play with the boys anymore. Fine, you know, it's hard to take. But then I was told I couldn't play with the girls because it wasn't fair. But I couldn't play with the boys because I wasn't allowed. So I had to play in goal for every PE lesson and every football game. And I wasn't allowed to leave the D. And I was just like, oh, it's the sport I love, my favourite sport, and I'm now being held back in all these different ways because there's just they had no strategy for how to introduce women's football to the larger group. So that's one example of many, unfortunately.
Thank you, Hannah. Remi, you gave a bit of a nod when Hannah was talking there. So do you want to share some of yours?
Yeah, I think we can all vouch for the whole, you know, when you turn up on a game day, sort of only with the lads and they all look at you and, oh, it's a girls playing and blah, blah. And I feel like the best way you sort of overcome that is just by going out and performing. And I always knew at the end of that game that players would turn around and go, she was one of the best players on the pitch, because I was always confident in what I could deliver. So for me, that was my sort of aim and ammunition every time I stepped out on the pitch when I was playing. And it wasn't even just the boys that would say it, was the parents. And I actually took full joy out of basically proving them wrong. And I feel like that actually shaped myself and my career as such. But I think more so nowadays in our game, in our professional sport, obviously there's a lot of media coverage all the time. So, you know, like now on Twitter, Instagram, stuff like that, if, you know, a clip goes out of someone scoring a goal in the women's game, if you click on the comments, if it's on BBC Sport, for example, you can guarantee that there's going to be so many horrible comments to the girls playing and blah, blah. And I think that's something that's been quite new to us and that we've had to deal with. I think for me, the way I sort of deal with that is I have to just look at what I'm doing and I get to literally live the dream that I've always wanted to do. I am a professional footballer, so I think it's, you know, there is narrow-minded people. You can't change that. And I actually don't even try to anymore. I literally try and play my game and enjoy my life on a day-to-day basis. And if they don't like it, then that's on them. They don't have to watch.
Absolutely. Thank you, Remi. Holly and Libby, have you got anything else that you'd like to add in?
Yes, I think naturally in the women's game, I agree with what everybody's been saying here in terms of the barriers. I think the barriers can be in regards to, you know, your race, being a woman in, you know, the female game, but also the game itself and the developments that, you know, it's kind of gone on. I think a barrier, I guess you can call it a barrier in the terms of having to sometimes have to do that dual career pathway. So I think it's vital for, you know, all female players to kind of have something else as well, because whilst the game is developing and it is progressing, it's also important to have something else. And I think whilst I wouldn't call it a barrier, I would say it's something that you have to juggle alongside playing football. So I know when I was finishing with the under-16s, there was a moment where I had to decide whether I wanted to focus all of my time on football or, you know, my educational side. And at the time I had to make that decision, there wasn't enough support around playing football whilst also being able to do my A-levels or a course or subjects that I wanted to do. So for me, it was a case of having to continue to play football to the level that I wanted to play at, whilst also concentrating on my studies and making sure that I was getting through my A-levels and eventually through my degree in my LPC. So I think, whilst I don't want to call it a barrier, because I think in general as female footballers, like, we play because we love the game. I think if we played because we were all about the money and what comes with the game, we wouldn't be playing it, because unfortunately, I know like Remi, for us, and Annie, like, not, I don't want to say back in the day, but you know, the game has grown so much that there wasn't really much that we could get out of it, you know, financially or in terms of that kind of support. So I think we've always been playing because we just truly enjoy the sport and we have a passion for it. And I think it's nice now that girls can actually enter this sport and they can do it on a full-time basis. Like, it can be their main focus because the game is growing. But I still stress that I think a dual career pathway in the female game is just as important as ever. So even though I don't want to call it a barrier, I would say that was something that was always on my mind and something that I always had to juggle.
No, yeah, I completely agree. Like, for me, I've been quite fortunate because I've only just turned 20. I've been, you know, as the game's kind of progressed over the years, I've been fortunate to be like in that sort of era of it. And obviously going full time this season's been incredible. But there was a point where the past couple of seasons I've had to juggle part time. I was trained to be a fitness instructor at the same time. And I'd have, on a Saturday morning, I'd have an early shift at like 6 o'clock, and then I'd be expected to go and train in the evening, or whether it's a game on a Sunday, and then the next morning have an early shift. Like, and as I say, like Holly says, it's not a barrier because we love what we do. Like, it's not, I don't want to like moan about it or anything like that, but obviously it is a bit of a pressure. And when there's other teams as well that are full time and have that like funding and backing, and then you're expected to turn up on Sunday and kind of match what they do, but we're in different kind of pathways. But yeah, I agree with all those points, really. I think it's important to have a dual career within the game.
Thank you. You've really hit a nail on the head there with that dual career there, Holly. So thank you. Moving then to Annie, how have you managed playing high level football and doing a master's and then now moving into a PhD? That's quite some impact on your time management skills, as a guess.
Yes, definitely. I think Holly and Libby have sort of led into that very well. It's not easy, I won't lie. I was very lucky in that obviously I've been at Leicester for many years now, and they've always been very supportive with that. And I've been around like-minded people that have also been juggling that dual career pathway. And I'm lucky that it's something that they were very strong with, and they always allowed me to continue that. But like they've said, it isn't easy, you know. In realism, we are doing two different jobs. You're trying to sort of get academic excellence as well as sporting stuff, and it's both very challenging, sort of mentally, physically. And I think it's something that even this time period we've had now, I've realised myself the effects that was having on me. But it's just about sort of, like you said, time management, communicating with people, keeping things as organised as you can. But again, I think I'm just lucky that I've been in an environment where to me that's normal. I don't really know any different. And being around those people that you can sort of bounce off, that, you know, they know how it is and what it's like to deal with those things. I've learned so much through it, and I wouldn't change it. And like, you know, Libby and Holly said, it's because we love the game, we love playing, and that's why you push yourself to do those things. So I'd just say, yeah, it's all about like time management, organisation, but having that love and that passion for what you're doing. So, you know, I love the science I'm in, doing that sort of stuff in the day, and then coming to play football at night. It's, if I didn't have that, I don't think I'd be able to do it. So I think fundamentally you've got to love what you're doing.
Thanks, Annie. And so, Hannah, coming to you with being a student and the chairperson of the club and all those sort of things, how was that helpful for you during your time at university, and what have you taken from that to now come into your career as such?
Yeah, I mean, I won't lie and say it was never difficult being the chairperson of a club with, you know, over 70 members and doing your third year and writing your dissertation and everything else. There were definitely some difficulties, but the experience of getting to lead a club like that, you know, going for sponsorships. Fiona, I spent a lot of time in your office. I remember during that period, the experience of it all was completely so valuable to my career. And I actually ran an event when I did my internship at DMU that was about taking part in sport, and, you know, not just as a chairperson, but just playing sport and how that leads you into so many more career opportunities and how valuable it is for employers. So for anyone who's listening and is maybe not considering going professional with women's football, but has taken part in it throughout their entire lives, I can't explain how valuable that experience is. And if you do get to be part of any committees or clubs, then really take that opportunity, because going into job interviews, I was getting asked questions about being part of women's football, getting asked questions about team leadership and taking part in things. So these are experiences that are universal, you know, leading a club, being a part of a team and teamwork, taking losses, being resilient is all part of sport and something that's so valuable. So even though it was at times tricky, and, you know, Annie talked a lot about time management, I'm not saying my time management was always excellent in my third year. Less time in the pub, more time in the library. But it was definitely something I would never take back. And it genuinely was my job that I do now, which is very boring, so I won't go into it. But they talked about that in my interview. They asked about the sports club, and it was something really good to fall back on and discuss. So definitely something I'd advise for anybody listening.
Thank you, Hannah. So Georgie, coming to you, as someone who coaches individuals who you know are trying to balance their academics as well as they're playing football and things like that, is there any sort of insight that you can offer into this?
For me, it's all about being really open and honest with each other. So they can tell me when they've got so much work that they physically can't train, and that's fine. But also me trying to help them balance out both sides so they can have sort of the best of both. They can still get their football in and their training and their games, but also make sure they get their degree or whatever qualification they're trying to get. But even with my younger players, it's still quite a big thing with my academy players at Birmingham. School is still a big thing, and even when they hit that age of like 15, 16, when they're on day release, it all has to be going well. So if they're doing well at school, they'll be able to come out of school to have their academy day on a Wednesday, whatever day it is. But if they're not, they won't be able to do that. So it's trying to get the balance and trying to encourage, yes, football excellence, but also the educational side. So I think it's just about being open and really honest and showing that both sides are very important. And it's not just all about football, but it's not all just about education. It's about trying to get the balance, which isn't always easy, but it's something that I try to promote and encourage because it's obviously very, very important.
Thank you, Georgie. On this, carrying on talking about sort of the dual career aspect, looking to our Leicester City women colleagues that are on the panel today, you have been on the cusp previously where the team were training as amateurs, I suppose, and then obviously this summer with the announcements of going professional. So you've had times where you have, like Libby has said, had to do shift work and all those sort of things. Is there anything else that you can sort of share specifically with some of the students that are watching around all that sort of time management, but still making sure you're passionate about your football when you might be absolutely shattered? Remi, is there anything that you want to add into that?
I think a lot of it has been touched on in terms of your organisation and sort of your time management, and I think it probably tests you. It probably makes you question how much do you love the game, and I think from that answer you then get your sort of the way of doing it. So for me, when I was at Birmingham, obviously we wasn't full-time professional, and I was doing 2 or 3 jobs in and around that, and obviously you've got to do what you've got to do to pay the bills, etc., etc. But ultimately I always knew that I wanted to be full-time, I wanted to be professional, so there was no way I was ever going to sort of sacrifice any of that, and I was never not going to give it my all in the opportunities that I've got. But yeah, it is one of them, you know, you've been out, you've worked, it's a late night, it's cold, it's wet, and you're like, now I've got to go out and train, like I've got to dig deep here. But ultimately I feel like you do sort of get to a point where you know what you want from it. So although there were times when I was like, right, come on, got to get out and train. Then when I'm there, I absolutely loved it. When I finished, I absolutely loved it. And I'm like, I wouldn't change this for the world. So even if I had to do as many jobs as possible at the time, I still would have never stopped playing football. So I guess I think it's just one of them for me where it's a great opportunity to understand whether you do want it or whether you do love the game as much as you think you do, because it's easy when things are nice and it fits in perfectly with your schedule and stuff. But I guess it's one of them where it allows you to sort of go, okay, how much do I love it? How much do I want to prioritize it? And for me, that was a big learning curve. And you know, fortunately for me, it didn't change my love of the game or anything like that. It probably enhanced it. So yeah.
Fab, thank you, Remi. So thinking through with regards to what Holly was talking about that desire to still have a dual career whilst being a professional athlete. The WSL has come in over the last, I think, 10 years now, and we're seeing huge amounts of progress, but I don't want to put words in other people's mouths. Holly and Libby, coming to you, what changes have you guys seen with regards to women's football with the introduction of the WSL and moving to professional contracts now?
I think it's just more of a focus on female players being able to play football full time. So I think in turn you see probably not a higher standard, but because now all teams are full time, you're kind of bridging the gap, because before, when it was say like your Man City and just a couple of teams who were full time as opposed to the whole league, the gap was far too big. But I do think that gap is closing, and it will continue to close with all clubs not becoming equal, but becoming quite similar in terms of the setup and the structure of that league, in terms of it being full time and hopefully more investment going in. I think now we've seen with the WSL that the broadcasting deal with Sky Sports, that the game's now going to be on Sky Sports, is fantastic, because I think the problem with women's football is that people wanted to watch it, but the times that it was coming on, it just was not, easy for all to watch it. So I know with the women's football show, the highlights would come on at like 11:30, and you're not going to get a huge audience watching it at that time. And even for young girls, aspiring footballers who want to see their favourite players or just their role models, they're not going to see them at 11:30 at night. So I think the direction that it's going in is very positive, and I think for aspiring girls, I think you have to see it to kind of believe it, and you need to see it so that you can do it. So by being able to watch more games and being able to see your role models more on TV, I think they will have a bigger belief in that they can be there one day too. So all in all, I think it's positive. I just think we also can't get carried away that we have, reached the pinnacle and we've reached where we want to be. We have to still keep pushing, and not fighting for our rights, but keep pushing to be seen and heard.
Just to add on to that from Hull, I think having been in the WSL and gone to the championship this season, I think it's been a real eye-opener for me to see. You kind of always know there's a difference in level, obviously, because it's two different leagues, one's below the other. But when you play in it, obviously in the championship right now, we're full-time and we're, it's great for us, and there's a couple of teams that are. There's also teams that are part-time. Obviously in the WSL, you're playing at elite standard all the time. And I think the gap from the part, even the full-time clubs in the championship, but the gap, especially from the part-time to WSL, is just on another level. So for me, it was really important to see that and understand that the WSL is flying and it's great, and we're getting the best foreign players coming over all the time, and the coverage and the Sky and all that stuff. I think now, as long as we can keep pushing the league below that and keep pushing the standards of that, then women's football in general is going to go from obviously great what it is now, but even more. And I think it'd be great for the championship to eventually, get as many teams full time and that as well. So like I said, across the board in the women's game, everything is just improving. So I think that would be the next aim as such for championship sides as well.
Thanks, Remi. Annie, is there anything else that you want to add in, having seen a lot of this all take place as well?
I think they've touched on some really key points there, and I think exactly what Remi's just said, that it's all about building that whole system. So the more promotion, it's a vicious circle, but the more support we get, the more funding, the more sponsorship, and it all just keeps cycling. So the more we can build the leagues from below and build up, getting women's coaches in, getting people watching the game and bringing all that support and funding, it's just going to take the level higher and higher. And the more full-time you've got, the more it pushes, and the standard's just going to keep getting better. Just more of that, really.
Thanks, Annie. So just a plea to our audience, if you have got questions, please do put them in the chat, and we will get around to asking them. We have got one question that's come through, It's more of a question to all the panel of if you'll complete a survey for someone who's involved in football across Europe. So what I'd ask is if Forsyth, JJF1, sorry, if you can email the events inbox and we could send that to our panel, if that would be all right with the panel here. So thank you for that. We do have a second question, and I think there's a number of you who'll be able to answer this, around becoming a football coach. I know a number of you are UEFA B coaches. So what was your journey into football really, and what advice can you give to someone else who is looking to become a football coach? So we'll go to Georgie first.
For me, it's about putting in the hours. When I was 13, I knew what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to work in the elite men's game, but I didn't realise at that point how much I actually needed to do. I think I was quite naive, and now I'm at this point, I'm realising how much I've actually done, but also how much more I need to do. So my advice would be get out and coach, to get out on the grass and do as much as you can. Find a team, whether that's a Sunday league team, whether that's young players or older players, whether that's a young boys team, young girls team, a men's team, whatever it is, and just keep adding to your experiences, whether you're observing people when you're actually or you're actually physically coaching, as well as getting qualifications along the way. But the main advice I can give is go out and actually start coaching. So try and find a team, and there's loads of teams where you'll be able to volunteer or get paid to coach, but it's just getting on that ladder and not giving in with the challenges that you'll face, because it isn't easy, the amount of hours you have to put in, but it's definitely something that is achievable, but you just need to sort of get the ball rolling and get started.
Thanks, Georgie. Annie, you coach as well, so do you want to add anything else in?
Yeah, so just similar really, getting as much experience as you can. And there's so many clubs out there now, male and female, where you can sort of volunteer and go through your badges and stuff. So obviously I was lucky that I got an opportunity whilst I was still playing at Leicester to do my level 1, FA level 1, then went on to do my level 2, and then was looking to start my B licence before all the sort of COVID stuff and that. But yeah, if you can go through your courses and get those ticked off, obviously that's the sort of criteria you need to tick to get the higher positions later on. But it's just the experience, you know, different age groups, different genders. The more you can get, the better, and develop those key skills that will help you later on.
Thanks, Annie. Remi, do you want to add into this?
Yeah, I think great points what everyone said. I think definitely for me, I think it's really important to try and get different experiences. So I feel like within coaching, sometimes you can very much go within your comfort zone because you like a style of a way of coaching, and you see somebody do that and you're like, yeah, I like that, I'll try that. I think getting out your comfort zone and, you know, working with different people and getting different experiences, maybe in something that in areas that you're not particularly sure of or fond of, or you need work in that. I think trying to do that and banking all that experience and all that knowledge is really, really important for you as an all-round coach. Because I think it's very easy in the game to sort of, like, I know my strengths as a coach, so I know what I'd want to do all the time, but actually is that always the best for me and for the players? So yeah, I think seeking that, differences of opinions, environments, the ways of coaching and things like that can really be beneficial.
Thanks, Remi. We've got some more questions coming in, so that's fantastic to see. So coming from Democracy Cafe, are there any infield and out gender discrimination that you guys have experienced? So does anybody want to pick up that first?
I will. I think that's a great question. And I think through experience, being in the female game for such a long time, I've been involved in it. I've unfortunately had to deal with it. And for me, what's frustrating is that you're constantly being compared to the men's game. So your knowledge or your ability to actually coach or manage or play is constantly being compared to what a man would do and how well they'll do it or whatever, which can be quite frustrating. But at the same time, I think there's just still that issue of the old traditionalist views out there that football is just a men's sport when it's really not. I think on the field, in terms of gender discrimination, probably not as many experiences, but off the field, I can say that it can be quite a challenge to not go for jobs or that. I'm just saying it can be quite hard when you're being challenged sometimes because you're a woman, in terms of whether you have the knowledge for the role or whether you are capable of whatever position you're applying for. And at the end of the day, I think as a female, you have to, this is why I think, like the question with football coaching, you have to get your levels in, you have to get your qualifications in, because we unfortunately have to be more reliant on that to actually show and to kind of provide evidence that we are capable of taking on such roles. I sometimes don't think that's equal, or the same treatment is kind of given to other people. So I think in terms of that kind of gender discrimination, I think from my experience, you have to have everything. You have to have your qualifications, you have to have your experience, and you have to not just be good, but you have to be the best at what you do to sometimes be taken serious, which unfortunately, it's not right. And I think it's getting better, but I still think there's a long way to go in terms of the treatment that is sometimes that occurs along those lines.
Thank you, Holly. Really, really valid and relevant points there. Coming over to Georgie, do you have anything to add to this question?
Well, as you can probably imagine, coaching the men's game, I've had many things that I've sort of had to overcome, and there obviously have been times where there has been discrimination, but for me, I always sort of ignore it, laugh it off, forget it, because I feel as long as I can do my job and my players respect me, that's all I've sort of came to do. But I think one example is when I went for a job interview at a professional club, and most clubs have security on the gates, and it was for an academy role with I think it was the under 11 academy boys. And when I got there, the security came up to me because I was like, I'm here to see, and I said the coach's name, the head of coaching, and the security said, are you his missus? And I laughed. So like, straight away I laughed, because I thought, hang on a second, I was 19 at the time. I was like, I'm 19 years old, and he's just asked, am I his missus? And I laughed. I went, no, I'm here for this job interview. But for me, the big standout was I went in and got the job. So for me, yeah, it shouldn't have been said. But again, there's some instances where it was an age thing. He was a lot older, so maybe it would just happen that day the coach has said, oh, my girlfriend, my wife's coming in, and like trying to be on sort of the fence. But I mean, there are sometimes explanations to it. But when I look back now, I think, yeah, it's come a long way. But I mean, I still get things now where, are you the physio? No, I'm not the physio. Or managers completely not realising who I am, then going, oh, you're Georgie Van Dijk. I'm like, yeah, that's me. I'm the manager. So I think it's, as long as I can do my job, I've sort of got to forget that, because the direction that I want to go in, it's going to get a lot worse than that when I'm coaching in the elite men's games. So it's annoying, and hopefully it will get better for more people, and hopefully I'm taking all this now, and hopefully for people following in my sort of direction or footsteps, it will be easier for them. But yeah, many examples of when people have said stuff, but sometimes I just have to forget it, and it is what it is, although you shouldn't do that. But I've got a job to do, and I want to be able to do that to the best of my ability.
Thank you, Georgie, and congratulations on getting that job. Remi, over to yourself.
I just wanted to say on that as well, I think it's so important to back yourself. I think, potentially as women, we have that nature to sort of, in some occasions, have a little bit of self-confidence issues or doubt it. But one thing that I've learned, and being in the game for such a long time and at an elite level, is if I've got a point and I believe in it, whether I'm a player, whether I'm a coach, I'm backing myself when I say it. And I don't care if I'm sat in a room full of men, whether it's women, whether it's kids, whoever. If I'm having a conversation and we all play at an elite level or coach or work at an elite level or in our jobs, and we're good at our jobs. So you have to have that element of backing yourself and believing in what you're saying. And I think that's really important, because, not all men, but some men may have a conversation, they wholeheartedly believe what they believe. And, we don't doubt that. We don't sort of question that. So why, as women, can we not be that as well? So it's something that I've definitely taken forward. If I'm putting in a coaching point, or I'm on the pitch, I'm on the grass and I'm playing, if I deliver a point, it's because I genuinely believe it's right and I back that. And I think that's really important in the society that we're in. and in a sport where men are still predominantly dominating it, I think it's really important to have that self-belief and back yourself.
Thank you, Remi. Really important. And something that all of you actually touched on was something that's quite prominent in the press and things at the moment around, if you can see it, you can believe it and dream it, and think of young girls that clearly potentially see all of you guys as role models within within football, whether it's as a coach or as players. So coming through to Annie, what or who I should say is your current role model, and how do you feel that could impact on the young Annie that is currently playing football at the moment?
Sorry, Fiona, it just cut out there. Could you just repeat the question?
Yeah, of course I can, sorry. So thinking through with regards to role models, and currently for young girls that are out playing football, starting hopefully today with grassroots sports recommencing. And if you can see it, you can dream it and you can believe it, and then you can go and do those things. Who is your role model, and what advice would you give to your sort of 9-year-old self right now?
Well, so for me personally, I think growing up, it was always the likes of like Kelly Smith and Rachel Yankee and people like that I always used to look up to when I was playing. I'm sure you probably will have all heard of them, but I don't know if the young kids now will have. But obviously, it's fantastic for the girls that I coach that they can look up to the likes of sort of Libby and Holly that are in-house, you know, and Remi to sort of aspire towards in the club. And I know they've been very lucky in that they've had opportunities to sort of chat with some of the first team players at Leicester. And I think having that pathway, having those role models is so important for them to see what they can become. And obviously, these girls are living proof that it's possible now, whereas we probably, I think even at the time when I was very early starting out, I don't think there was anyone that was professional at all. Some of the players were going over to America and stuff, but it just wasn't a career option, which led me to then sort of go on to academia as well. But it's so important for them to have that. And I think, yeah, looking up to likes of, you know, the Leicester first team and other Super League teams and stuff is great. And I think that's what they should aspire towards, you know, and leading their example.
Thank you, Annie. Hannah, what about yourself? Can you remember yourself at 9 years old and who your role models were, and how you can weave that in for the 9-year-olds of today?
Yeah, I mean, as Annie said, that women's football was so much less prominent back then. So there was the likes of Kelly Smith and Rachel Yankee, but you didn't really get to see a lot of them. So my role model actually at that age for a female in sport would have been someone like Serena Williams, not a footballer, because that was somebody you saw who broke down every barrier put in front of her, was at the top of her game. And yes, she was constantly compared to the men's game and put down, but she proved countless times and that it didn't matter. And it's unfortunate that I didn't have more female football role models, because it just, you know, maybe the FA Cup game would be on or the England game would be on twice a year. You'd see these women footballers, but it was so much harder. So for 9-year-olds now, the fact that they can watch pretty much any club they support, you know, they can have choice and they get to see. And it's unfortunate that the women's TV show, that the highlights were on late at night, but you know I would have recorded them and watched them in the day. And I think that's fantastic, and what you girls are doing now as incredible role models for these young girls. So hopefully, you know, they should still idolise Serena Williams, but they can pick a young female footballer to be their role model now in the future, and that's fantastic.
Thanks, Hannah. Holly and Libby, is there anything to add that you'd like to see regarding role models?
Yeah, so for me as well, it was Kelly Smith. I remember when I was younger, I was a mascot for an Arsenal Cup final, and I was probably about 6, 7. And I remember walking out of Kelly Smith and thinking, wow, like this could be me one day. There was quite a bit of a crowd, actually, considering it was quite a while ago. But I remember sitting in it and thinking, and she scored, and I thought, wow, like, and a typical celebration with a boot, and I just thought, wow, this could be me. And having the same surname as well, I don't know why, but when I was little, I just pictured my name on as the shirt, and I just thought to myself, like, that's where I want to be one day. So yeah, for me, like, female role model would be someone like Kelly Smith, but also I think, like, more recently, as in for Leicester City men, I think they've been great role models in terms of never giving up and being the underdogs, and which we are as women a lot of the time, an underdog. So for me, people like Jamie Vardy, who has proven that, coming through the setup and not really having much, and then later on in his years, showing that it's a reason to never give up. And for me, that's really inspiring, and what he does week in, week out. So yeah, that'd probably be it for me.
My answer was literally the same as Hannah's, word for word. So I probably don't want to have to repeat that. But yes, everything that you said, Hannah, I felt the same. It's a shame that we couldn't see as much footage of players when we were younger. Rachel Yankee was, again, the one that I can remember in terms of how silky she was. But for me, Serena Williams was probably my biggest role model, just because of the barriers that she broke down, but also because she was unapologetic for who she was as a person and as a female sports person. She didn't change. She continued to fight the way that she wanted to, because it was her showing her passion for the sport. It wasn't her not being able to control her emotions. She didn't change just because of the media or what people thought or said about her. And for me, that strength that she always showed is something that resonated with me a lot.
Thanks, Holly. Over to Remi.
Yeah, for me, like the girls have said, growing up and stuff, I think there was a real lack of coverage to see any of the female footballers, and it was something that I never had. My role model, my hero growing up was actually Steven Gerrard, but I was very fortunate. When I was about 14, I actually got to come in at the Loughborough Player Development Centre where the England girls was. I got to go and train just a couple of nights a week when I could, fitting it in with club football at Leicester at the time. And when I went, Kaz Carney was there, and I absolutely just loved everything about her. She was just a great person. She was just unbelievable. I remember the first training session, I couldn't get near her. I couldn't keep up with her. I was absolutely shattered come the end of the session. I remember going away and thinking, I'm never going to be able to do this. Like, she's just so good. I can never get near that. Strangely enough, 6-7 years later, I'm in the same team as her at Blues. And it was just, I feel like that was a real turning point for me, because I got to see what a real female footballer was, what a real female role model was. And I think that was one of the moments that sort of changed everything for me, because I knew, God, I've got to put some work in. I've got to get better. Like, I've been played with her. So yeah, she was massive for me. And like everyone said, now people get to watch that and see that week in, week out, day in, day out with social media. So it's definitely changed for the better.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think very much, certainly with the new television deal with Sky and the BBC, hopefully this will be a conversation of the past, and that there'll be even more people and more women for young girls to aspire to be over the next couple of years, certainly that TV deal and free-to-air TV as well, which is brilliant. Coming over to Georgie, similar question, but I suppose female coaches in the men's game is more of a hidden topic at the moment. So what about yourself with regards to role models as a female coach in the men's game?
I think, like, when I was growing up as a coach within the men's game, I didn't have any role models. So I sort of, in a way, I sort of used myself as my own sort of role model to sort of motivate and inspire myself, because I knew I was doing something that was a bit different, even though I often forgot what I was doing was different to everyone else. But I think that sort of pushed me and motivated me. But there have been people obviously along the way, like other sportswomen, like we've said, like Serena Williams was up there, Kelly Holmes was up there, and those sort of people that I used to watch outside of football and think, oh yeah, they're doing something. But now it's sort of, I'm seeing a few more people. I mean, there's only a few of us in the men's game, but I'm seeing a few more people. For example, Hannah Dingley at Forest Green, who's the head of coaching, she's got a pro license. And for me, looking at her thinking, okay, she's done that, I can definitely do that sort of thing. But motivation like that and people to look up to is very important. But for me, I've had sort of to choose different sort of role models because of the very few that there are in sort of my line of work. But it's, for me, I've had footballers that have been role models as well as sports, women and men. So I think if you can find someone that you can relate to in some way, or just like playing the game or whatever it might be, then you can do a lot with that, and it can really help you.
Thank you, Georgie. Really important points there. So coming back to our audience, we've got a question from Jackie Forsyth. How much focus has been given for you as a player, and perhaps the coaches, to female-specific issues that might impact your performance, such as the menstrual cycle, breast health and pregnancy, and anything like that. And obviously, this is coming really into the fore, and certainly in the media at the moment. So, is anyone wanting to start this question off?
I don't mind.
Yeah, Annie, go for it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really great question, and it's interesting actually because it's something personally that I'd never really thought about or given much thought into until very recently when I heard a podcast. I think it was Lucy Bronze was discussing it with some people, but how much England women are now, obviously the backroom staff and that are putting research into this sort of topic. And I think there's a couple of other places. So America were one of the first sort of to lead with it and things, but it makes such a huge difference, hormone levels, and it makes sense when you think about the science behind it and stuff. But I think it's something that's going to have a big impact on the game, and to achieve high performance, you need to sort of look at these things because it can have such a detrimental effect and a positive effect if you use it in the right ways, so give the right supplements, give players the right support at certain times, depending on where they are and things. I think as the discussion, becomes more open and people do discuss it and the support's there, it's going to make an improve performance. But I think it's something that's been massively neglected. And even myself, being a woman going through it, you just don't talk about it. But I think if it can become more open and it can be used to enhance performance and sort of to help people, then it's going to be great. But yeah, I'd say it's something that's been neglected, but it's slowly becoming a thing that's being used to help performance.
Thanks, Annie. Georgie, as a coach, is there anything that you want to add into this?
I think it's definitely something that has been neglected, like Annie's just said. It's definitely been neglected. But I think knowing your players is really important. Even me in the men's game, understanding my players and what they're going through is highly important, which is also important for coaches who are coaching women, and understanding each individual, because it's going to be different for everyone. But for me, it's knowing your players is such a huge thing, regardless of whether they're men or women. But me knowing my players and knowing how they operate and what they're going through, and there might be ups and downs, is so important to be able to have an impact on that player's journey and just life in general.
Thank you. Remi, I believe you've got something you'd like to add here.
Yeah, just a quick one. I think we're actually experiencing it now at Leicester. We don't know whether it's a link, but an injury that I got recently linked to the menstrual cycle and how I felt on that particular day. So it's something that we're discussing and something that we're sort of, with myself personally, planning on at the time of training, and when it is within my menstrual cycle, do I train? Do I offload, or is the training session changed or tweaked a little bit? So it's definitely something that even at our club we're starting to add and whatnot, and I think it's fantastic because it definitely is something that's huge for all of us as women every single month, most of us. So yeah, it's a real good thing that's going on at the minute.
Fantastic and fascinating, and also thank you all for talking about it, because in so many walks of life the menstrual cycle is still a taboo subject. So thank you for your openness. Really appreciate that. So we have got some other questions that have been coming in, so thank you again to the audience. John, and I'm sorry, Aleye, so apologies if I've pronounced your surname wrong, very likely. Without there having to be an uprising to initiate change, how do you all keep flying the flag for women's football, and also for changes to take place across all levels of the game today? So anyone wanting to, Holly, go for it, straight off the mark.
We were just going to say about flying the flag for women's football. I think we were just saying how important it is to do that, because as we said earlier, it's about getting the broadcasting for it all. And what did you say about that? That bit where we said about the social media thing.
What do you mean?
We were saying, sorry, we discussed this earlier, actually, this exact thing. We were saying how in social media, it's really important to, for us as players to promote our games. So when it's live on the FA Player, for us to then say to people, oh, you can watch it on the FA Player at this time, or before Corona, when you come and watch the games, to promote it then and say, look, you can come down and watch the game. I know that last season Leicester put on a lot of family fun days, which is important. Because obviously then you're bringing young kids along, even if they're not interested in football, they might come along for the fun part of it, but then they might catch their eye and they might think, well, my friends are doing it. So I think that's really important. And like I say, just promoting it on social media is huge, really.
I also think in order for us to continue to, keep flying the flag. I think as footballers, well, as anybody involved in this game, whatever capacity, whether it's as a coach, as a player, as an analyst, as a physio, I think we all have a role to play, and it's for us to kind of help to inspire the younger age group. So I know when I coach on a Saturday, myself and my coaching partner, who's also female, we would go to games, but we would be the only female coaches there. And sometimes it was quite surprising that we didn't come across more players who were looking to get involved in the coaching world and to actually be coaching their own teams. So I think to help keep the game, to keep, flying the flag for women's football, we have the responsibility, like Libby was saying, to keep, showcasing what the game is about by showing it on social media, by talking about it, by being involved in it, by coaching the younger girls who are coming through. We have a role, and I know the female footballers who came before us, they've been very active in developing the game, and whilst we thank them, we also have to follow in their footsteps, and for us take on kind of that baton and to do more ourselves. So as they've helped to develop the game, I think it's also now our turn to do more, as opposed to just playing it. Yes, we are reaping the benefits of the work that they've done in the past, but we can also reap the benefits whilst also helping to develop it further.
Thank you. Yeah, really, really valid points there. We've all got a responsibility to continue developing the game and the awareness around it. And certainly that new TV deal will be pivotal to continuing that change that we want to see. Anyone else want to add in to answering John's question there?
I just wanted to say that I think for all of us, as the experiences we've had, one of the best ways that kind of encourages you to keep flying the flag for women's football and keep pushing it in the right direction is to look at the progress we've made just in our lifetimes. I mean, unfortunately, it's 20 years I've been playing football now, and just to see the difference that has happened in that short period. In my parents' lifetime, women weren't even allowed to play football. So just looking at the progress we've made makes you want to keep pushing it, because you can see the finish line, you can see the light at the end of the tunnel, just like Holly said about, the progress that we've been making. And all of us as participants have a responsibility to keep pushing that, and talk to female family members who are little kids and maybe they're thinking about getting involved in sport, and just encouraging everybody who considers it to keep going. And I think it's just so important, and we're going to keep seeing that progress throughout.
Thank you, Hannah. So unfortunately, our time is starting to come to an end. It's been so interesting, and I've still got hundreds of questions to ask you all. And I know that there's questions that we haven't answered in the chat from the audience. But to sort of leave on a really positive note, talking of progress and change, what do you all feel is next for football, whether it's women's football or as a female coach in the game, as an audience member, a spectator and things like that? So what I'll do is I will work around the screen, and I'll come to Hannah first.
I think what's next for women's football, I'll try and keep it brief, is just a massive uplift in professional game. I think you'll start to see, Remi touched on the championship and how there's still some semi-professional. I think you'll start to see women have more of a choice of going solely professional and not have to balance that within a work life. And you'll start to see it promoted everywhere, and it'll be on TV, and we'll finally have equality. Maybe that's a bit of a dream.
Keep dreaming it, Hannah. We'll get there. Georgie, next to you.
I think for me, I can see that we're moving in the right direction in terms of, for me, especially women in the men's game. I'm seeing a few more, I'll say that, a couple within the men's game. Obviously, there's not many of us, but I do think that I can see people at high levels in the men's game, females, and I do think that there will be that point where there is that transition where they're coaching at an elite level, and I think that's the direction I'm going in. And for me, and I know a lot of other females in the men's game, it's not really about being the first. That's not the aim. It's more about being the best you can possibly be at that point and be able to do the job that you want to do. So I think for me, that's what I want to see next. And I'm hoping that will be the step that we take, is seeing females within male game, other than just me and the other few that I know.
Fab, thank you, Georgie. So then over to Annie.
Yeah, I think similar to the others, really. I think it's hopefully going to be more and more professional, full-time female athletes and coaches in the game. I'm hoping that sort of, yeah, obviously the participation is going to increase, so more girls playing, more people watching, and just the sort of money and the financial backing behind the game improving, and then hopefully some national success as well. Hopefully the women's team can bring some cups home.
Fab, thank you, Annie. Remi, then, what do you think's next for the women's game?
I think it's just to keep pushing the unique platform that we have, because for me, the difference between what you get from a media perspective from the men and the women is you get a more personal touch with the women, because, you know, the men are very much protected and a lot of their social media stuff isn't done by them. With the women, it's very personal. I think fans get to probably experience, see a little bit more of the human side of a female professional and a female footballer. And I think that's where our platform is. I think it's really unique in that sense. And I really do think it's something that when you say about inspiring the next generation and all the role models, that's where we get it. And I think if we keep pushing that, we get more and more girls involved in the game. We also hopefully get more and more boys and males enjoying the game. So for me, it's pushing for that and striving for that.
Fantastic. Thank you, Remi. Now we'll come back to Holly and Libby, who've joined us back again. Batteries have recharged.
Sorry, the laptop died.
So I'm asking you, what do you think's next for the women's game before we wrap up?
Yeah.
So I was reading on BBC Sports today that they were looking at implementing another European competition for women's football. So I think it's growing and it's developing, and I think that's fantastic that not only now, well, hopefully we'll have a Champions League, but there'll be another European competition for the teams that don't necessarily make those spots for the Champions League. So I think there's a lot of work being done behind the scenes to make it more competitive, to make it to kind of better the game. So I think it's positive, but I think we just have to continue working hard, like I said before, to continue to be heard and seen, because I think all of this is coming about from, a lot of people behind the scenes working to make the game what it is. I think it's a shame because the female game was so big before, it was kind of stopped so abruptly. So we're kind of having to go back to the successes that it had, some time ago. And I think we're getting them and we will reach it again. It's just that we have to continue fighting for that, and that's men, females, that's everybody involved in the game and also outside of the game, just having their say and their involvement to help it grow. And then you had another point.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think it's important as footballers in the game for us to really to push on with it. I think keep the standards high, keep the quality high, and then making sure that we are being positive role models for the youngsters. I think obviously the youngsters are going to eventually take our place, and obviously we want to leave it in a better place than it has been before. So I just really think keeping quality high, driving, the standards, and making sure we make people more aware about it. And yeah, hopefully it'll get to a much better place than where we've left it. So yeah.
Fantastic, some amazing answers. Thank you all for your time this afternoon. As I've said, there are so many more questions I'd like to ask, and I know there's more questions in the comments, so we really appreciate your time. I want to wish best of luck to those of you who are going back to football today, with the grassroots sport being able to go back. And then obviously the best of luck for the next 3 league games and the cup match progressions as well, to our Leicester City women. We really value your time today, and we've got everything crossed for the next couple of weeks for everybody on the panel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.